Hello everybody, welcome back to Hunting Mark. I am Cameron and I am excited to be here today. We are going to be talking about all the differences really between the 17 HMR and the 22 LR. So these are two rounds that are compared pretty frequently, and it's nice to really be able to understand the differences between them. They serve a very similar function, but there are some subtle differences that can make one or the other better for your situation. So we're going to kind of rank them on a few different things here, and we're also going to show some examples of what we're talking about. But the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that they do serve essentially the same function. These are both rimfire cartridges. They are low power, their projectiles are tiny, they are intended for very small, close range applications. All right, we'll just get that out there. They both do that. We aren't going to be talking about the 22 Magnum in this comparison because we wanted to focus on the LR and the 17 HMR, but it really actually doesn't change much if you include Magnum in it. A 22 Magnum is going to do everything. But just know 22 Magnum is going to be a chunkier, beefier version of 22 LR if you decide to go that route. Okay, so first thing to compare them on, price. This is actually a big deal, especially if you're going to be putting a lot of rounds through it. 22 LR is dirt cheap. It's crazy cheap. You can get it for like 10 to 12 cents per round, even at the retail stores. And you can find deals online as well. It's very, very cheap. Now, what's crazy is 17 HMR is not expensive ammo. 17 HMR is also a fairly affordable ammo, and yet you're still going to be paying sometimes 4 times as much per round for the 17 HMR as you will for the 22 LR. So that's a big check in my 22 LR column, in my opinion, because a lot of what you'll be doing with these two rounds is, again, short range, and you might be practicing, which means you'll be pumping a lot of rounds down range. And so that adds up very quickly if you're doing 100 rounds, if you're doing 200 rounds of practice. Yeah, the 22 LR is going to be a much more affordable option for you. So on that note, though, as we're talking about practice, you know, the 17 HMR is going to be a superior round in just about every measurable way in terms of performance and ballistics. So you're going to have a much flatter trajectory, so you'll go out a lot further before the bullet starts to drop. And because it's supersonic in the design of the projectile, it's not going to tumble as much in the wind. It's not going to get knocked aside as easily by wind and things like that, so you'll have much tighter groupings with a 17 HMR at pretty much any distance. Now that said, you can still get decent groupings with 22 LR at 50 yards, at even 100 yards, you can get semi-decent groupings with the 22 LR. So if you're shooting out beyond 100 yards, unquestionably 17 HMR is superior. If you're shooting at 100 yards exactly, it's going to depend on your priorities. If you're shooting at less than 100 yards, the differences between 17 HMR and 22 LR, in my opinion, do not justify the extra cost for the 17 HMR. Talking about ballistics, neither of these rounds is designed for long range. They're too small. They're too small. The projectiles are too small. There's not enough powder behind them. There's just not enough going on there to get really beyond, in the case of the 17 HMR, I'd say beyond 300 yards. And even at 300 yards, the 17 HMR has already experienced a lot of drop. And I'd have to check a chart to be exact. I think it's about 1.5 feet of drop at 300 yards. So you're already getting some pretty significant drop there. The 22 LR, on the other hand, has actually dropped 6 feet by the time it gets to 300 yards. So you've got to be kind of doing the longbowman thing with the 22 LR if you want to go out to 300 yards. Jokes aside, most people are going to use these types of rounds for one of two things. They're either varmint hunting for pest control around the ranch, or just for fun, that's their varmint hunting, or they're just trying to practice their fundamentals. They're plinking at the range, trying to get better at shooting, okay? So a ranch gun or something controlling varmints or doing any kind of varmint hunting, if you're, again, within 100 yards, 22 LR. If you're outside of 100 yards, the 17 HMR is going to do better for you, and the differences are actually going to start mattering at that point. It's kind of the same thing with practicing. If you're within 100 yards, you should be just fine with 22. If you're trying to go beyond 100 yards and practice that, 17 HMR is going to be a much better way to do that, because you don't have to get very good at shooting before you start being limited by the 22 LR. and its capabilities. And it just, no matter how good you are, the round simply will not group as tight as you're capable of making it group. The 17 HMR will. So if you want to really tighten up your fundamentals, your shooting stance, your follow through, all of that, then you're going to get a lot further with the 17 HMR than you will with the 22 LR. Now, if you're just practicing the absolute basics, and you've got, you know, your kid or someone who's inexperienced with shooting, and they're just trying to practice the really basic stuff, and they're really happy with a 3 or 4 inch group at 100 yards, and that's what they're striving for. Okay, 22 LR is going to be a much cheaper way to get there. So we wanted to test this out because the drop of 22 LR at 200 yards is hilarious. So we wanted to try it out, and we wanted to compare it with the 17 HMR so you can really get a sense of why that does matter. So we're going to do a demonstration for you really quick. We've zeroed a 17 HMR rifle and a 22 LR rifle at 100 yards, and now we're going to shoot them at 200 yards to show you how we have to compensate for the drop and how much drop we're compensating for just by going out to 200 yards with these 2 rounds. It's fun. We're excited about it. That's what we're going to do.
All right, to demonstrate drop of a 17 HMR, we have here a Savage B17 in 17 HMR. We're going to use some CCI 17 grain V, well, they're not VMAXs because that's proprietary, polymer tips, a box velocity of 2550 feet per second. Here we go. Alright, there's our group. We'll see how that looks, and then we'll compare some 22 drops.
Okay, so I think for the 22, let's, I mean, it's probably going to drop a lot.
It probably will. I mean, if the box velocities are anything to go by, this is already 2.5-ish times faster. Give or take, you know how box velocity numbers are. And I will say not every one of those trigger pulls was 100% good.
Sure.
So honestly, the group sizes, I'm not too sad about either. But the drop, that kind of tracks, but it's interesting, even though it's going 2,500 or so out of the barrel, at the muzzle. That is not what a 308 will drop, and it's got about the same muzzle velocity, but the difference in projectile mass makes a huge difference.
So where were you aiming? What was your aim point?
Aim point was right here.
Okay. Hey, that's not bad at all.
It's not. And for 0 to 100, this is 192 yards.
Yeah.
You got to be careful with your ranging with rimfires. That's just how the name of the game goes, but that's why they're such close range tools. Because the difference in range, even small differences, make a big difference in height where they hit.
So before we come back out, let's try the 22. Try to do a group at the same aim point.
Yes.
And see how much lower it is. My guess is it's going to be dirt. I don't know that we'll be hitting on paper at all.
I will say I wasn't expecting the 17 to be quite that low. I don't think we're going to be on paper with a 22. To demonstrate the drop on a 22 long rifle, here we have a Savage Mark II FVSR. You can see he's got bare threads on the front because I took off his suppressor, trying to keep as many variables out of the equation as possible. Let's shoot this and see how far he drops. There's some stuff kind of in front of our target. I wonder if we're going to hit before we hit our target. It'll be fun to see. Longbowing it, as Cameron said. That's definitely dirt. Without a doubt, that's dirt.
That was dirt. That was dirt like a foot in front of it, too.
All right. So 12 clicks should be 3 inches at 100, which will be about 6 inches at 200. Let's see if that's enough.
Here we go. Ooh, okay. That was still dirt, though.
Want me to go another 2? Another 4 clicks?
Yeah.
Okay, another 4 clicks. 8 inches up at 200 yards.
Still dirt, man.
Well, it's going to hit dirt at some point up there.
Now, that was dirt in front of the target.
Dirt in front?
Yeah, that was dirt in front.
All right. Another 4.
But it seems like you're getting close.
Okay, 10 inches at 200.
That was still dirt, but it was to the side. It was dirt in front, off to the side. Yep, still that bottom right corner.
On that cardboard, it's good enough.
Ooh, that was lower. It's almost like this round is really inconsistent at range. Still dirt.
All right, well, let's make this the last one. And if that doesn't illustrate our point, well,
how much have you adjusted so far? Still?
That's still 10 inches.
Okay.
I did forget to mention these are CCI Mini Mags, 36 grain, 1260 feet per second, box reported velocities.
Explain why we're not using this.
Yes. We brought some
Stingers.
CCI Stingers, which report about 16 or so 100 feet per second at the muzzle, but we were having terrible groupings with those, terrible enough that we didn't feel we would have a consistent measurement for drop, so we're not going to use those, even though those are about the highest velocity you can get. This rifle was just not having it, so we're using not the fastest, but about the faster side of standard velocities for 22. Mini mags are kind of hot for 22s. Let's go.
I would say double it. Honestly, you're still hitting dirt.
Okay.
I would say 20 inches, because you'll be on paper. You might be, like, if you keep the aim point the same, like, you might be a little high.
Okay.
That's
10 inches at 100. Well, 5 inches. That was 5 groups of 4 clicks. 5 inches at 100. 10 inches at 200. That gives us an added 20 inches of elevation for 200 yards. Hey!
Hey!
The impact was. I think we were off onto the right side as well. Firing. Pulled that one a little left. It's fine. I got one more. I think I drifted right with the wind.
Yep, okay, I see him. Yeah, you're in the bottom right quadrant.
Dang.
That last one obviously was too far to the right.
It's a lot of drop. So it looks like we've got our 22 impacts. There. These ones on the cardboard. Those are pretty new, so aim point was up here. So that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5 for the tallest one there. 11.5 or 12 inches for the lowest one. And then those over there to the right, we'll just call that some windage issues for the scope zeroing. But let's call it 11 inches of drop plus 20 inches of adjustment is 31 inches of drop from a 100-yard zero.